This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is July the 8th, 2024. I want to talk about the U.S. government policy on elections. I talked about a different part of that last week. There is still aftermath from the presidential debate that was last Thursday. And what I want to focus on is Sunday, there was an ABC interview from the president. And I also want to talk about the 25th Amendment and then how the parties would remove a candidate and replace them with someone else. I think that this is important because the media and the print media all weekend have been running all of these possible scenarios. And the fact is, you're very limited to what you can do to a person who you think that you need to get rid of off of a presidential ticket. So I want to give you the facts. The ABC interview, I don't think will change anybody's opinion who thinks that President Biden is having issues with his memory, which is a strong charge in itself. There is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that talks about that. And I'll go ahead and talk about the 25th Amendment because federally, that is the only course of action that could be done to remove a president. Now, for other crimes and things like that, they can try to impeach him, but as we've seen in the past, that really doesn't do anything. So his own cabinet would have to say that that person is incapacitated, and then they could get him out. However, they can only get him out for a little while and they could always come back. So this notion that the 25th Amendment would work and that you could have somebody removed, yes, you can, but that is temporary. Unless that candidate or that president dies, if they don't want to be put out, there is nothing that you can do. And all of the speculation that the media and the talking heads do on these Sunday shows doesn't matter. Okay. So, and I will also note that donors are taking money away from candidates. It wasn't just Biden. It's worked that way for President Trump as well. When he says something that they don't like or somebody puts out a sound bite, they've been talking about that he's a felon. And I will remind folks again, there's nothing in the Constitution, there's nothing in the party rules from either parties that a felon cannot run for the nomination for president. So we have to move on from there. I want to spend a little bit of time on three categories that we can focus on. Okay, so we can focus on replacing a presumptive nominee before the National Convention, replacing a nominee between the National Convention and the election, and then replacing a president-elect between the election and inauguration. Why am I bringing these up? This is the only way that you can replace a candidate running for president. If we look at the first one, the presumptive nominee before the National Convention, so the media outlets have been talking about it. So there, in this process, we know who the nominee will be, and they get delegates pledged to them. And the only way that they can be replaced is if during the convention the delegates go with another candidate. That is the only way, and of course the Republicans have one way of doing that process, and the Democrats too. And I want you to note something too. In 2016, when President Trump was candidate Trump and running, they kept threatening him with, once he got to the convention, that they were going to give his delegates to someone else and that he wouldn't be the nominee. So both sides have had issues, and when they got to that Republican convention, it didn't happen. Now, a lot of the party leaders from the past, to include previous presidents on the Republican side, didn't even go to the convention. Okay, the other part of the replacing is replacing the nominee between the National Convention and the election. Here's why you can't do that. At this point, states have laws because they want to know who you can put on the ballot, and if you don't meet their deadline, you won't be on the ballot. So that's a wash between replacing the nominee between the National Convention and the election. Now, there's something going on in Ohio with them putting Biden on the ballot based on them doing a primary in Ohio, something like that. But the bottom line is he's going to be on the ballot. Now, the next one is replacing the nominee between the National Convention and the election, which I just talked about briefly. But the bottom line on that is the parties control that, and the nominee cannot be taken off of the ballot. So correctly moving forward here, replacing a president-elect between the election and the inauguration. Okay, so in between the time that the person is the president-elect and the inauguration, you can replace the president-elect according to the 20th Amendment if they die. If they die, the vice president becomes the president-elect. That is the only way. If the president-elect does not die before becoming incapacitated, he can voluntarily transfer authority to the vice president after inauguration. That's the 25th Amendment. So we need to pay attention to this. So if there is a handoff, or let's just put it out there, they're saying, hey, we know that our guy can win, so why don't we let them get voted in as president, and then we can transfer power to the vice president who we don't think could win in the first place. That is the only solution if the president wants to have the vice president become the president-elect, because in those other processes I just told you, other people would have to weigh in at the convention to make the vice president the nominee as president. And I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do, but logically looking at it, if they want Vice President Harris to be President-elect Harris, and they don't think that she can win in a general election, that would be the only way why they would do it. Presidential election rules are only the 20th and the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. Otherwise, both of the major parties control their own destiny. And as I said last time, the rules that I've laid out, those are the rules. The rules that I told you about the last time I talked about this, those are the rules. So calling somebody a felon, trying to put people's dirty laundry out there, that is not working. I talk to people every day, and the same people who like President Trump are still the same. The same people who like Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, are the same people. People are not looking at policies. And that's one of the reasons why I do this podcast. We have to start looking at people's policies and take the emotional and the physical baggage out of our decisions. During that presidential debate, as I told you before, both candidates were weak on any policies that would affect anyone in the country. One of them was tax cuts. The second one would be, why hasn't the Fed put down or let go down interest rates? People can't even buy houses now. Then you've got pharmaceutical things, prescription drugs. We're not even almost talking about those. We're too worried about somebody being a felon, somebody else's son being a felon, and all of this gossip that's not going to help our country. And oh, by the way, President Biden never answered why he had this immigration policy. They pivoted to his age, the media outlets did, and didn't even talk about the fact that during the debate, he was light on details, just as President Trump was light on details. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think.